So I put out a tweet on Twitter and just said, you know what? This is the People Show. I want to get the People segment incorporated into this whole thing. So one, follow me on the socials at JD Pickell on Twitter and on Instagram to make sure you stay up with all that opportunities for interaction. But one of you posed a question or a suggestion for a segment that I think is really intriguing, and that is the criticism of Ryan Day. Is it fair / is Ryan Day right for Ohio State? I'm paraphrasing. That was the general sentiment, but I think it's fair. I think we need to address that question because when you look at the standard at Ohio State, what is it? Beat Michigan, win Big Ten titles, play for national titles. You look at the track record these last 2 years for Ryan Day. It's a small sample size. We'll talk about that. But he has missed the standard twice. And Ryan Day is someone who very much understands that standard. He echoes that sentiment. He knows what it is. And so for him to miss that 2 years in a row, now you have people starting to become uncomfortable with Ryan Day and what he's doing at Ohio State. Also, he's 1-2 against Michigan all time. That's not okay with the folks in Columbus. It shouldn't be okay with the folks in Columbus. And the fact that they have lost the last 2 years in a row in similar fashion where Michigan just kind of out-physicals, out-toughs them, and kind of forces submission, it's not something they're all right with. And I understand that. That causes more frustration, not just to lose twice, but to lose in the same way twice. So for the folks in Columbus, I hear you, I understand, and we're going to talk about this right now as to how much of a fit is Ryan Day and is the criticism fair? Okay, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We've had a ton of the Buckeye faithful join us. We're glad to have you here. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at JD Pickell, like I already mentioned, but this is your 12-month spot for all things college football. We don't take a break. We don't take a month off. There is no offseason around here. That's fine. If everybody else wants to go and do their thing in the summer, we're keeping you locked and loaded right here. Back to the topic at hand, though. Let's talk about Michigan. The frustration with the Michigan losses is shocking in some sense. Like, not the frustration, but the Michigan losses in themselves are shocking. The conversation is fair, but I don't think we're considering all of the context because there's a lot of conversation comparing Ryan Day to John Cooper. John Cooper was 2-10-1 against Michigan. Okay, Ryan Day is 1-2. Can we relax a little bit? Can we not compare a 13-game sample size to a 3-game sample size? Also, let's be 100% right now. They canceled the Ohio State-Michigan game in 2020 for COVID. Ohio State would have won that game. I don't think that's a stretch. I don't think Michigan fans would even disagree with you when you talk about the 2020 season. It was a wash for all parties involved. They canceled it. It sounds like that was the right reason. But if we want to factor that game in as a win for Ryan Day, if he's 2-2, does it change the conversation? I don't know, but it looks a little bit better on paper. And maybe the, fact or the argument that, hey, he's 1-2, he has a losing record against Michigan, I think maybe that just gets turned down a half knob. But again, the last 2 years, lost in an unacceptable way. I'm cool with that. But here's the other thing we got to look at when it comes to context. Lost to Michigan the last 2 years, yeah, okay, I hear you. Well, maybe some of that also has to do with Michigan. Maybe Michigan's emergence and the resurgence of that program under Jim Harbaugh. I know we don't probably want to give credit to that if we're an Ohio State fan, but let's at least, look at this in a fair sense. Michigan in the regular season the last 2 years, 25-1. Okay, so this is not just some slappy Michigan team rolling into Columbus or you're going to Ann Arbor to play. Like, this is a real deal Michigan team that I think has earned a lot of the credit and accolades that have been given their way. Again, I know you don't want to hear that, but that's the fact of the matter. Ryan Day is playing a good Michigan football team. The competition is very much a real thing whenever they play the Wolverines. So you never want to lose to your rival. You never accept losing to your rival. But if we're going to be harsh on Ryan Day, if we're going to say he's not the right guy in Columbus, he's not a fit, if we're going to say fire Ryan Day, because some people have said that, some of the more extreme part of the Ohio State fan base have asked for that, we need to make sure we're looking at all the facets of this operation. And Michigan being very good is a real part of the operation and a real part of the whole story that we're looking at. So for Ryan Day, here's one thing that I want to pose in regards to like the criticism with Ryan Day. I think there's a very real possibility that what Ryan Day is today as a head coach is not what he will be in 2 to 3 years. Because he's only been a head coach since 2019. His first head coaching job, they threw him the keys to a Ferrari, to the Ohio State football program. That was already humming when Urban Meyer left. So the pressure was high. He got thrown the keys to a program that was already at one of the top tiers in college football. It's like, hey, kid, you're 16 years old. Here's the keys. Make sure you don't crash the car. Right? Like, that's a lot of pressure. That's a tough spot to learn at. Ryan Day had never run an operational organization before. And that's very much so what you are as a head coach. You are a CEO of your football program. Your assistants, they handle the football. You handle the operation. I know Ryan Day's a little more hands-on, but I just think it is irresponsible to assume that he's not going to develop more as a head coach. Now, here's the other question I would ask you. Is there somebody else that you wholeheartedly believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that you could get to Ohio State that would do a better job than Ryan Day right now? Like, truthfully, do you think you could go and get a better solution to run your football program than Ryan Day? Because you look at the facts, 45-5 through 50 games as a head coach. That's a ridiculous winning percentage. Only lost 5 games your first time being a head coach. You're sitting there saying, you know, I could do a better job with that roster. Are you sure about that? Are we 100% sure about that? Also, the things that you ask a head coach to do, the things that you grade a head coach on outside of those games, okay, recruiting. Well, I haven't had a class lower than 5 since he's really been the head coach there from 2020 on. So they're top 5 recruiting every year. Okay, check that box. Gets great talent on campus. Average over 40 points offensively every season since he's been the head coach. Okay, he's an offensive guy. We brought him here to continue to run the offense effectively and continue to, trend upward and be elite. He's done that in spades. Check that box. I'm just saying, I understand the result isn't favorable right now for Ryan Day, but through 4 years and 3 games against Michigan, is that really what we're going to just burn the boats on? Is that really what we're just going to say, you know what, it doesn't work? I think that's extremely short-sighted. Now, to be fair, Ohio State is a Ferrari, but let's give Ryan Day a little bit of time to get his feet under him completely. I understand 2019 is a few years ago, but let's also look at it this way. It's just a few years ago. He's still probably getting better as an organizer, as a CEO of the entire operation. Like, there's probably still some room for growth, and I think Ryan Day would tell you that. So let's not totally just throw this out the window. So here's my pitch if I am a flustered Ohio State fan. You're still playing for the college football playoff. You still got Georgia in the semifinal game. Let's see what happens there. But let's just say the worst case scenario happens. Let's say the favorite Georgia wins the game. You lose if you're Ohio State. Okay, got it. Didn't win the Big Ten. Didn't compete for a national title. Didn't beat Michigan. 0-3. I get it. My feel is give it 2 more seasons. Give it 2 more seasons. That's not an inordinate amount of time. You're not going to take a step back as a program. You're not going to just throw this thing to the dogs if you have 2 more years of the same thing. Now, if you go 1-4 against Michigan, if that's the same song and verse we're singing here, and you don't win the Big Ten, and it's 2 more years of this whole not hitting the standard, then I think you have a very real conversation. Then I think you have a real evaluation and say, okay, at that point, you've been our head coach since 2019. Now it's 2024, 2025, whatever it would be. Let's talk about this. Let's see how we can adjust here. Because Ryan Day knows the standard. I've said it before. He knows the standard. This is not a surprise. This is not okay with him. But I do think a lot of room for growth. 45-5. I don't know if there's somebody better to go and get. It takes a little bit of time to reach what you're going to be as a head coach, I think, for Ryan Day. Just give it a little bit of time. Let's give it at least 2 more seasons. And if at that point you're still beating your head against a wall, okay, let's have a talk. I'm not saying the answer is to fire him. I'm not saying we go and just at that point totally cut ties. I'm just saying at that point, my feel would be there's enough data and there is enough time to make a little bit more of an educated decision on Ryan Day and Ohio State. Okay? It's going to play itself out, though. Imagine if they did win the national championship. Holy cow. that would be a whole other conversation we could have in January. It'd be a fun one. It'd be a very interesting debate about Michigan and Ohio State and all that, but it'll be a fun one to see how this team finishes the rest of the year as they find themselves, like I said, in the college football playoff. This has been The Hard Count. I'm J.D. Pickell, Nick Brake, lifting heavy, doing everything that you see here. This is your show. So subscribe to the channel, follow me on the socials at J.D. Pickell on Twitter and Instagram, and we will keep our end of the bargain. So we will keep the party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.